Mary Magdalene, on the way to the tomb on that first Easter, thought she was in the midst of an ending. In many communities today, we gather around grave plots, placing flowers on them. Easter is but a memory. The woman had gone to the tomb to care for the body of Jesus. It would be a time of remembering. It was an ending. Life is about endings and beginnings. Life is a succession of losses. For Jesus, it was the same. Eating at the table with those who would betray him and abandon him. An ending. Facing death, a redemptive death, but an unjust death. An ending. Feeling the strength and the life and the breath leaving his body at the place of the skull. An ending. In our lives, there are many Good Fridays. You can probably make a list of the Good Fridays in your own life and in the days up to what we've been celebrating, which is an ending. Days when strength and life and breath seems to be leaving your body. An ending. Days when you were betrayed and wrestled with forgiveness. An ending. And yet, Easter reminds us what looks like an ending is actually a beginning. Early in the morning, Mary came to the tomb. The body is missing. She thinks it has been stolen. She runs to tell Peter and John. They run back. John goes in the tomb. It is empty. He sees and believes. It's like a new beginning. But Mary is standing outside the tomb. For her, this is an ending. That something happened, didn't it? Two of us can be close together, near the same situation. One sees a beginning, another one sees an ending. Then she hears a voice, a message. "Woman, why are you weeping?" "They stole the body," she said. "He's missing." And now we come to the heart of the story. We know something that Mary does not know. Have you ever listened to someone, maybe your children, maybe a friend, and they describe a situation, and to them it seems like an ending, but you know that it's not an ending, but a beginning. We know the story here. She thinks she is talking with the gardener. But isn't it amazing how God comes to us through ordinary people? Grace never comes to us in the abstract, but comes through those ordinary people. She tried to explain that the body has been stolen. He looks at her and says, "Mary." And it's Jesus. And she says, "Teacher." And she goes and announces to the others, "I have seen the Lord." What looks like an ending is actually a beginning. So what is our Easter faith? Easter faith makes us aware of the one who is with us, even though we mistakenly assume that we are alone. Easter faith is built upon the foundation of the one who rolled away the stone, even when we are at the end of our own strength and efforts. Easter faith is rooted in the one who continues to teach us. If we have ears to hear and eyes to see, that ending can be a beginning. Easter faith gives birth to resurrection living, doubt as a way to believe, mourning as a way of dancing, despair as a way of hope, and death as a way to life. Easter faith is about glory and victory, but it's also about fear and uncertainty. Have you ever had an experience when watching a really good movie and you think the ending has been tied up together, But when you get there, there is a surprise. It's not the way you think it's going to end. On Good Friday, even Jesus said, "It is finished." And maybe those who were listening were thinking, "It's all over. Let's go home." It looked like an ending. Maybe you are here today because you come on most Sundays. Or maybe you're here today because it's Easter. Maybe you're here because you have come to an ending. Endings are about obstacles in our lives. Sometimes we hold on to the past, which is an obstacle. Sometimes not seeing the holy in the ordinary is an obstacle. Sometimes being afraid is an obstacle. Sometimes doing it all yourself in your own strength is an obstacle. Guilty. Sometimes avoiding the tomb is an obstacle. In life, there are endings. We reach an obstacle and it seems to be over. But what looks like an ending, when seen through the eyes of an Easter faith, is always a beginning. Easter is about overcoming obstacles. Overcoming obstacles is the greatest theme of the Bible. Remember Abraham and Sarah? They were too old. It looked like an ending. They weren't going to have children. But God came to them and said, "I'm going to give you a child, and from that your family will grow to be like the stars in the sky." Moses had an obstacle too. God led the people out of slavery under the Pharaoh, and he finds himself on the edge of the water of the sea. It looks like an ending. And God speaks and says, "Stretch out your hand and divide the sea, and you will pass through on dry ground." And they crossed the Red Sea. What looked like an ending is actually a beginning. Israel had suffered exile. They had been driven away from their homes, their temple destroyed. It looked like an ending. And God speaks and says through the prophet Isaiah, "Comfort, oh comfort my people," said God. "Speak tenderly to Jerusalem and cry to her that she has served her term and that her penalty is paid." What looks like an ending actually is a beginning. In this early morning, the darkness gives way to daybreak, and Mary is weeping. It looks like an ending. And someone speaks and says, "Woman, why are you weeping? Whom are you looking for?" And then someone speaks and says, "Mary." God says her name. God always says our names, and she tells the disciples, "I've seen the Lord." What looks like an ending is actually a beginning. In the early morning, the darkness is giving way to daybreak. The disciples of Jesus knows this hour. Maybe you have been there because you were at an ending. Maybe there's some obstacles in front of you that seems insurmountable. Maybe you are weeping. Easter is about endings and beginnings. Easter is an obstacle and a power of God and the power of God to overcome the obstacles that are put before us. Ending or beginning. In the world you face persecution, but take courage. I have conquered the world. Ending or beginning. I am the resurrection and the life. Those who believe in me, even though they die, will live. And everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Ending or beginning. All authority in heaven and earth has been given to me. I will be with you always to the end of ages. There's a parable about 3 trees that stood in the forest and prayed about their ultimate destination, ending or beginning. One tree wanted to be used as a magnificent building. Instead, the tree was cut down and used for a trough in a stable in Bethlehem. ending or beginning. The second tree wanted to be used in the construction of a great merchant ship. Instead, the tree was cut down, used to build a small fishing boat to sail on the Sea of Galilee. Ending or beginning. The third tree wanted to point people to God. This tree wanted to stay in the forest. Instead, it was cut down and made into a cross. Our hopes are in the future that is unrevealed until its season. Something God alone can see. Sometimes God can only see. Something especially at Easter. What looks like an ending is actually a new beginning. Amen.